Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Operation Public Safety Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, February the 7th. So we're going to get started here. Let's start with a roll call, please. Kim?
Thank you. Council President Boyce?
Here.
Councilmember Fincher?
Here.
Councilmember Kaur?
Here.
Councilmember Larmer?
Here.
Councilmember Michaud?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas? Councilmember Troutner? Thank you.
Okay, all right. We got 5 items on a agenda for tonight. So let's move on to item number 3. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the agenda we have in front of us tonight.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion is second in discussion. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, which is business. And I'm going to get first thing is approval of the minutes for January 17. Ask for a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes dated January 17th, 2023.
Second.
Got a motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Moving on to item number B, Ordinance Authorizing, man, I have a hard time with that word, our city attorney, Tammy, please.
Good afternoon, Council. What I have before you is a draft ordinance that would authorize remote meetings for your boards and commissions. So what we have currently under code is if there is an emergency, which is something comes up and it's an unforeseen circumstance, a board member can ask the chair if they can attend remotely, and that process can be authorized. What this ordinance would do is offer 2 additional options. So we would leave that emergency provision in place, so it would still apply, but then would also include if a board and commission is not subject to the OPMA, then all of them can attend remotely without requiring a physical location. If the board or commission is subject to the OPMA, then 1 or more commission members could attend remotely, but we would have to maintain a physical location here. And so whether or not a board and commission is subject to the OPMA or the Open Public Meetings Act is really, are they taking action in place of you or doing something that you would otherwise conduct? Are they taking public testimony or a public hearing on anything? If those kind of actions are occurring at the board or commission, then it is subject to the OPMA, and in order to allow remote attendance, we would have to have a physical location provided here at the city. So I could go through the ordinance, kind of talk through some of the provisions that would apply to the remote meeting, depending upon whether or not the board or commission would be conducting business that's subject to the OPMA. But there were 2 things I wanted to kind of address that were raised during, I think it was your December 6th Operations and Public Safety Committee meeting. One of them, there was some concern about the PFD, the Public Facilities District, and making sure that we didn't have them subject to any of these provisions. With respect to the Public Facilities District, we have a specific code section that says all of the provisions that you've adopted about boards and commissions apply only with respect to getting a selective pool from which you appoint people to the PFD. None of the other provisions, as our code is written now, apply to the PFD. So I don't think we need to do anything there to address that issue. One other conversation point that came up during your December meeting was whether or not you wanted to have the chair be required to be here physically present. That is not currently folded into the proposal that I have before you, but if that was a desire of council, it was something that I could write in between this committee and council process. So just wanted to kind of clarify those 2 points. So unless you want to address either of those issues now, I can just sort of go through the proposal that I have for you.
Let's address those real quick before we go. So the first one again was the PFD.
The PFD, the Public Facilities District, and I don't think we need to do anything with our code to deal with it, because really the provisions that you have already adopted for boards and commissions only deal with the PFD with respect to going out and advertising for the position and trying to get people to that pool that the mayor can pick from to appoint for you to then confirm.
Okay, thank you. Zan, you got a question regarding PFD?
Oh, well, both things.
Well,
Yes.
we'll do the
Okay, so
PFD
if you
first.
are good with PFD, how it's written, then I'm good with that. And
Okay.
then as far as having to have the chair here, I don't see any reason that they would need to be here if no one else has to be here.
I think Brendan might have brought that up last time. I could be wrong about having it. Did you talk about?
And I did. There is, and this is only the ones that are subject to the OPA. So there is always a staff member here in that case, right?
Correct, there would be.
So it's possible that the staff member would be here by themselves, but we have them here so that in case someone wants to come and comment or just listen in the meeting, just to do the meeting from here, that would be possible.
Correct. And it's my understanding, and I'm going to look to our CAO, but I believe when they looked at the concern of a staff member being here by themselves, there wasn't that much of a concern given the timing of when these meetings occur, that safety concern really wasn't present for most of these boards and commissions.
Okay.
So a little more dialogue with the chair. I mean, my preference is to have them here, but I don't care one way or another. It makes sense to have it here, but I don't know. You guys have any thoughts around that or concern? No, from standpoint there?
No concerns from me either way.
Okay.
I have a question on that.
Please, yeah.
So in the case when they don't apply to the OPA, the staff member is not required to be here, just as the other members would not be, correct?
Correct, yeah. So if I could go through and talk about sort of all the provisions that will apply when a board or commission is subject to the OPMA, when they're not, I think it'll help clarify some of those questions too.
So I think we're okay with the PFD. Seem to be okay with the chair not being here. So,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
All right, so on page 7 is where we get into the first option, which is when a board and commission is not subject to the OPMA. And so in that instance, everybody can attend remotely. That would be every board and commission member could attend remotely, the staff representative who supports that commission could attend remotely, as could the public. So we would not provide any sort of physical location here for the public to come in and listen. So if that commission wanted to meet remotely, first the chair would have to approve that. So this would have to be the chair. I think that was really important to council, is that the chair have the discretion to decide whether or not the particular board or commission was going to meet remotely. So it would be at the discretion of the chair. The chair would then also consult with the secretary of the commission, which is the staff representative, to make sure that we have the technology that's needed, that we can have this sort of live interaction in the remote world, so that everybody has access to the information on the record. So we need to make sure that the technology is going to support that remote meeting. I'm of the understanding that our IT department has been working on that process to make sure that it's more reliable so that we can have that remote attendance. We also need to make sure that it's, again, through this real time. It can be either electronic, through telephone if for some reason it's not working, and then also through Zoom if that was an option. We also, if the meeting has the option to activate the camera, that it's at the discretion of the chair that the camera be activated. Again, I think that was a point of conversation that you had in your December meeting, was that it should be the chair to decide whether or not those cameras are on. And then also that there's real-time remote attendance provided for the public. And so if all of those circumstances are met, then the board and commission could meet remotely. And again, that would be just for those that are not subject to the OPMA. So that would be like your bicycle advisory board. Trying to think, I think I have some examples written in one of the comments. It's on page 7 on the left-hand column. So the Bicycle Advisory Board, the Cultural Communities Board, and the Parks and Recreation Commission. Those typically are purely advisory boards and commissions. They make recommendations to council, and then you decide what you're going to do with those ultimate issues that come before you. Sometimes the Arts Commission and the Human Services Commission are subject to the OPMA, and that often is when they're dealing with grants. So each of those commissions will sometimes award small grants, and when they get into that type of conduct, that would trigger it and make them subject to the OPMA. We do have a special provision that's being presented to you for the Land Use and Planning Board. They are more often than not subject to the OPMA, so we are making a recommendation that a quorum of that board meet in person, and only those members beyond that quorum meet remotely. So I'll go through that in a little bit more detail when we get there. That's later in the ordinance. So if we have a board and commission that is subject to the OPMA, things are slightly different. So again, this would leave it more at the discretion of the chair. So it would be one or more commissioners, or honestly all of them, could attend remotely if the chair authorized it, so long as a staff member is here. Again, the chair would have to consult with the commission secretary to make sure that we have the technology that's needed to support that meeting. Also, it will be imperative that they be able to participate and communicate in real time, both with those members that are also appearing remotely, but those that are also here appearing in person as well. And then to make sure that they have access, if they're remote, to any of the materials that are being discussed or presented during the meeting, particularly here in person as well. Now, on this one, if it's subject to the OPMA and they have the ability to activate their camera, again, we provide that they should activate it, but still do leave it at the discretion of the chair. I think there was some conversation before about requiring that cameras be on. This does still leave it at the discretion of the chair, but does indicate if there is some technological problem where the camera fails, that doesn't somehow invalidate any of the action that the board or commission takes. So that's really important when we're dealing with meetings that are subject to the OPMA. Again, it would require that the individual attending remotely has access to all of the documentation, that they can participate in real time, and also that real-time participation is made available to the public, even though we would still have a physical location here. And again, they would have to also comply with any other requirements of the OPMA. So any questions on that part before I move on? Okay. And then the final part deals with the Land Use and Planning Board, and that's on page 13 of the ordinance. And this is where it would require a quorum of the Land Use and Planning Board to meet here in person. So there's 7 members, so that would require that 4 be here, up to 3 could attend remotely. Now, we would still have in place the other provision that allows for emergency attendance, so it's possible that there, may be a potential conflict between the two, but the intent is that the quorum would meet here in person, and at most 3 could attend remotely.
So they put a lot of responsibility on the chair to make sure, hey, every meeting, I got at least 4 people showing up.
Correct.
If for some reason I got 4 and then somebody get in an accident, then you probably won't be able to have the meeting, I'm guessing, right?
Let's see, I'm trying to see the exact language that I had in there. Yeah, they have to hold them such that a quorum is present in person, so it's a requirement currently. So that provision would trump the emergency, in my opinion, would trump the emergency provision in 250 that would allow for a member to attend remotely. This quorum requirement would apply.
Okay.
So 4 of them would have to be here.
Have to be here for the meeting to go on. Okay? Okay? Any guys?
I do have a question. So for just the public record and public accessibility to these meetings, so like the Parks Commission today, we don't broadcast that over YouTube the way we do our committee meetings. We don't do that today, correct?
That's my understanding. I'm not very familiar with, we do not.
We do not. Okay, so we're not really making a change. We're not making
No.
anything less digitally accessible. It's status quo as far as
Correct.
I'm
So if a meeting is happening remotely through Teams or through Zoom, we would not theoretically record that meeting because we don't do it now.
Okay.
Okay. Zandria, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Council President. Do we have the capacity to do that? To record the meeting?
And that is a question beyond the lawyer.
I stood up because I figured that question was going to come up. We would have to be paying people probably overtime to do that. And it's a big lift. It would shift what we've been doing for years. So anybody, the notices are still going to go out. Kim will send notices out, and they will have on it what people need to do to attend remotely via Teams, or in the case of the Land Use and Planning Board, via Zoom. That's the way we propose to keep it. Our staff is a little strained. They're up there on Tuesday nights, so that's we are suggesting that part of this not be changed. The other thing, I just wanted to mention something else. Regarding requiring cameras to be on, it's important to keep in mind that camera functionality is a matter usually of the remote attending person's bandwidth. And that can be affected by not only their level of service they pay for, but it can be affected by how many people in the neighborhood are on the internet. If the whole neighborhood's gaming, it reduces the amount of data that can come out of the system from their home. And so they won't always have control over that. So I think we worked into the ordinance some flexibility on that issue that I think is important to keep in mind. So,
Okay. Councilmember Fincher?
Thank you. That last part is a concern if somebody can't get that worked out as far as their participation in the meeting.
well, the video is what clogs up the system. They should still be able to be on if their camera's off. The video uses a lot of data. So if there's a bunch of people, like I think if you were to stay home a day and get on the internet at noon or 1 o'clock, your internet speed's probably going to be a lot faster than if you get on at 6 o'clock when everybody's home from work and they're doing their thing and whatnot. That's just how the system's set up. So it's the video part that can be interrupted most commonly, not just attending though with your circle in the Teams meeting or on the Zoom meeting.
So they would still be able to hear, speak, participate in the meeting?
Theoretically, yes, unless it got really bad. And again, we can't control what's going on from their end. We have no control over that whatsoever. All we can do is try to control what's happening on the city side. There's been, and Tammy, I think, kind of referred this over to us, media and IT have been working together to kind of harden up this system in here. And then in conjunction with that, there's new technology over in Centennial South where a lot of these smaller meetings will be held, mainly most of them actually. And we're going to shift over to Teams, which is a much more reliable system. And the video system, I think Kim can attest, is really, really easy to use. It's there. It doesn't have to be moved. Nothing has to be set up. You turn it on and you press a button and you go. And so for staff, those who run internally these meetings should have a much better experience in ensuring that the meetings run smoothly. So I think Land Use and Planning Board is going to stay on Teams. I'm sorry, Zoom. Most everything else is going to be shifted over to Teams.
Okay.
Because it's way more reliable from IT's perspective.
Then to Councilmember Michaud's question, I tuned in this week to your Parks meeting, so I was able to get in, but no, you don't see anything. So when you guys were referring to the charts, there's no visual there, but you can still hear what is being said.
That's a committee meeting. She's not talking about the commission meeting.
That's a
Oh,
committee.
the Parks Committee meeting?
Yeah.
There was
We're talking
technology
about
failure
commission,
during that?
Parks Commission instead of Parks
This
Committee.
ordinance is for commissions.
So you were talking about just the commissions, okay.
Any more discussion? Councilman Michelle, please.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Okay, so I checked in with Arts Commission, Human Services Commission, and Parks Commission staff to make sure they were okay with everything. The only concern was that if the meeting was remote, completely remote, and one staff member had to be here, they were concerned about safety, because being the only staff person here, I think all of those are women, so they were concerned about being here after hours by themselves. So I would just hope, I guess, that they would work with their chair so that hopefully wouldn't happen, or are there any other options?
Yeah, and I think the only committee, if I'm not mistaken, would be that meets after hours is the Arts Commission. Am I not mistaken? The ones you just mentioned, I think only the Arts Commission meets after hours.
Yeah, we meet at 5:30, correct?
You expressed a desire to remain in person at the last meeting. So we'll have to navigate, if we want to move that over to a remote meeting, we'll have to address the potential safety issue, because the front door will be open and there will not be many people in this building. And we do have, as I mentioned before, we do have occasion where somebody is found in a bathroom or in a stairwell or something, so.
So is that committee not, that would be up to the chair like the other committees were?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
And I think that's an important point for all of these boards and commissions. It's at the discretion of the chair. So if there is a concern that way, it should be a conversation between a staff member and the chair about those issues and trying to make sure what can we do to ensure safety if there is an intent that only one or a few be here in person.
So going forward, I mean, the chair have the responsibility, so if they change, I guess they got to coordinate with the staff, really. If they decide to go 1 week here, next week here, they just need to coordinate with the staff and members of the group.
Correct, yeah. So it leaves it to the discretion of the chair, but it does require that they communicate with the commission secretary so that there's an agreement there.
Okay. I'm okay. I'm old school. I like face-to-face, but hey, it's bigger than me, so it works, then that's all that really matters, right? So real quickly, Councilmember Shaw, other thoughts?
Yes, I just want to thank Tammy and her team for working on this. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Make something that is kind of complicated simple, so I did my best with the ordinance.
Appreciate that.
Councilman McCoy, you okay? Councilmember, you've been gone so long, longer? Okay, so we're good. So I think they might suggest, what did he say, March, before we get the technology squared away in this room here, when you last time?
Well, there's a motion, assuming it passes out of here today, it would then go on to your council meeting in February 20th, I think is the next one. and then it would take 30 days to be effective. And as for the IT, I think that might coincide with when the IT should be all ready to go.
I remember you mentioned something about that last time. Okay, so I think we're good. So I'm going to ask Councilmember Shaw, you have a motion?
Yes, Council President. I move to adopt ordinance number 4458 to amend KCC 2.50.090 to allow remote meetings for city boards and commissions on stated conditions, amend KCC 2.57 to provide that a quorum of the city's land use and planning board shall appear for its meetings in person, and repeal obsolete remote attendance provisions in KCC 2.55.060 and KCC 2.64.060 related to the Disability Board and the Firefighters Relief and Pension Board.
Second.
Motion is second. That was a mouthful. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass.
Thank you all.
And once again, Tammy, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, good job, guys. So we're going to move on to our last item, C, and it's information only. And this is about the comprehensive plan, and we have Kristen. Hey.
Hello. It's good to be here with you all tonight. I'm Kristen Holdsworth, the Long Range Planning Manager over in ECD. We were going to do this as a workshop item, but then we realized this meeting was a little bit lighter, and so we decided to give you one larger chunk of time between your next meeting. So this is moving ahead. We're planning on doing quarterly workshop meetings to give you updates on where we're at in the comprehensive plan, but sometimes we'll sneak them into other meetings depending on how the timing works. We have been really busy. I've come to you, I feel like 3 or 4 times to discuss contracts and grant approvals. The good news is all of that, the paperwork is all done. And so we now have consultants on board. They're called MIG, and they are a Pacific Northwest based firm. They have firms throughout the U.S., but they specialize in knowing Washington state laws and Growth Management Act. And they have some fantastic subs on. This project also is funded by a commerce grant, and so we have a large portion of it is going to be offset by funds from the state. We have been busy getting our ducks in a row, more or less. And so we've done some internal coordination. I did what I've called a world peace tour with all of the other departments. 1, because I wanted to get to know them because I'm new. But 2, also just to make sure we were all on the same page of understanding we're not throwing a baby out with the bathwater. We're building on a lot of really great work that's already happened over the past 7 years or so since the last comprehensive plan substantial update happened. Tonight, again, we have a couple goals. 1 is, this may look somewhat familiar if you've tuned into any of our land use and planning board meetings or ECDC committee meetings. We want to just catch everyone up of why are we doing a comprehensive plan, why do we plan in general, understand where we're going with our Kent process, and then review some of our outreach and upcoming deliverables. And then finally, we're going to flip the script, and instead of listening to me talk, we've built in some time to ask for your feedback and ideas as we're gathering our outreach plans and starting to form the rest of our process. So to start out, why do we plan? It may seem obvious, but without a good plan in place, everyone has a million different directions of what is right and where we should go. And so a comprehensive plan really acts as the North Star. It's not necessarily looking into the day-to-day details of how our boards and commissions should run, but it looks at, should we have public participation and what should that look like? So it takes it up about 20 stories higher than what our code regulations are, and says over the next 20 years, this is the broad direction we want the city to go. Really, we do a lot of things through the comprehensive planning, and if we do it well, it should be a coordinated plan so that departments are all working to fulfill it as you see budget requests come forward and as you see strategic plans and other efforts implemented. We in Washington State and as the City of Kent are under something called the Growth Management Act, which came about in the 1990s. You all may be more familiar with this than even I am, but it was actually a bipartisan effort to try to figure out how to plan for and accommodate all of this growth that was happening in the 90s. I think they'd probably laugh if they could have anticipated the growth that we're seeing now in this last decade. But we have this funneled framework where we have state laws that have 14 growth management improvement goals that we plan for. That funnels down into regional goals through the Puget Sound Regional Council, which is a 4-county area. And then within those 4 counties, each of the counties sets their own countywide planning policies. So Kent, we're in the city of Kent, but we're in King County, and so we work with the other jurisdictions to apply the broad state and the multi-county planning policies down more specifically to our regional level. And then this is our chance through our comprehensive plan to really apply it for what we want to do. And so we have some general guidelines that we follow, but we can make this work for Kent. And then this middle part of the triangle is a little bit of an iterative process. So we don't do a plan and then sit on it and say, well, that was nice, we'll see you in 10 years. As we're going along, we have other things like our transportation master plan or our parks and recreation and open space plan. All of those are happening, and so they're doing an iterative process of saying, what is our last comp plan saying that we should be achieving? And then where are things that may have changed that we should be pushing further for thinking out for that rolling timeline? And so we will capture a lot of the work that they've done and bring it into our comprehensive plan and continue to move that forward. And then finally, plans are big, broad visions, but it all gets implemented. The rubber hits the road, so to speak, when we actually write our development code. And so that really is where we will see the change happen. So we can wish all we want, but we have to write the regulations well so that we are making it so that development is happening in a way that we hope that it happens and not having these unintended consequences. But we also are beholden to the market. So we can have the best plans, but a recession could come in and could totally throw off our timing of when we think things will happen, because really it's at the time of development and redevelopment that we will see the substantial changes happen. So some quick stats on our 2015 comprehensive plan. The state law keeps changing, but typically you do what's called a periodic update, which is a more substantial review and update every 8 to 10 years. The last comp plan was 206 pages, but 300 total if we're including all of the background analysis and data. It had 9 main elements, which are on the right side. Comp plans also include sub-area plans, which are more detailed plans for specific areas. And they're normally warranted because something special is happening. So Midway Sound Transit was coming in, and so we said, hey, we're going to get ahead of this, and we're going to increase density, decrease parking requirements, look at mixed use around transit, and development that can support transit. Downtown, similar thing. We'll talk about downtown a little bit more. And then Rally the Valley was the most recent sub-area plan to really work on looking at ways that we can leverage our industrial lands. We're unique. We have 2 PSRC designated centers, and these regional growth centers are important for a variety of reasons. PSRC will say that they're important because they have regional significance and we're concentrating growth or economic opportunity in them. What that means for Kent is that we qualify for a lot of grant funding. And so by having these sub-area plans and having them in a recertification process that meets what their criteria are, we get millions of dollars in transportation and other funds per year because we have these plans. And so Public Works, when I told them we're going through a recertification process in 2025, I think I became their best friend. And they said, oh, good, we want to make sure we're still certified because they rely on a lot of that grant funding. So part of this process will be making sure that those center plans stay up to date. Our update in 2024, I wasn't around for the 2015 update, but it includes a lot of things that I think are kind of intuitive. We're going to look at what the new state requirements are and anything that's happened since 2015. We also want to recognize and honor that there's a lot of history in Kent, and our goal isn't just to throw it all out and say we know better, but to build off of it and say what's working for us now and where do we think there may need to be some changes. We also are going to start with a new SEPA environmental analysis. This is a really wonky term, but the state requires these non-project actions, so the plans and policies to do environmental review. We anticipate that the changes are significant enough that have happened cumulatively since 1994 that it's probably time to update our environmental analysis and start fresh. And so this has a variety of benefits. Really one of the major ones is that when development comes in, it gives them a strong foundation that each project is required to do an environmental review, but this gives them a strong updated foundation that they can cite. It also is taking into context the cumulative impacts of all of the incremental changes that we've made over the last decade or so. So really what drives a comprehensive plan, at the heart of it, we're looking at our growth targets and now looking at levels of affordability. And so these growth targets apply to every city or county that's planning under GMA. And they say in 20 years, you need to make sure you have enough land use capacity to accommodate X amount of growth, both in residential units as well as jobs. And so this HB 1220 has been something that if you know any planners, give them a hug. They've had a rough 2 years trying to figure out how to implement this. We are now required by state law to plan for and accommodate not just the number of units, but also by affordability. And so what that means is the state has worked to break down these numbers from a statewide level of this is what we think we need at different levels of affordability over 20 years, and say this is what it is at the county level. So in King County, we need about 309,000 new units over 20 years. When we break that up, you can see this U-shaped distribution. So clearly, we have a lot of work to do on the 0 to 30% AMI. That's pretty much supportive housing. So that is extremely low income housing, and because our market is so expensive to build in, it really doesn't exist without complete subsidies. And so you can see countywide, this is the need. And then as you go up the different levels of affordability, you see kind of the distribution of what we need in order to bring up and meet the needs of the future population as well as our current population. So part of HB 1220 that I spend probably 30% of my time in are meetings with the county and the state to learn how do we actually do this as land use planners, because I can change the color of a map and say, well, this can accommodate 5 units now instead of 1, but how do I make sure that's affordable? And so that's what we're really going to be talking about and working on, and it'll be a variety of different ways. I want to give a preview of what we're looking at for Kent's growth targets. This is going to be dipping our toes in the water. We'll have a lot more time to dig into this and what it means. But for us specifically in Kent, we need 10,200 more units over the next 20 years. And what that breaks down to is this chart on the right. It is all draft. The state is still working on finalizing their guidance for us. And so that's one of the fun things is we're planning while flying the plane as well. And so we won't know these for sure numbers until March probably. But you can see our distribution is really different. So King County as a whole needed a lot more 0 to 30% of the total housing. We do not. So it's really interesting. Kent actually has a lot more proportionally than the rest of the county of that 30 to 120% AMI. And what that means is just through naturally occurring housing that we haven't necessarily subsidized, but is just in our marketplace, as well as intentional efforts through our zoning and other programs with human services, we have a lot of housing that meets workforce and lower income family needs. What's really surprising and unique compared to most of the other King County cities is we actually need housing that is above 120% AMI. So that's what we consider market rate, doesn't need additional assistance. So we still need a lot of that 0 to 30% AMI. I'm not going to shy away from that and say that it's not a large number. Proportionally, it's much smaller than most of our peer jurisdictions, but we also need market rate housing. So as a city, we need to think about adding 10,200 units that meet these levels of affordability. So it's kind of a multi-jigsaw puzzle mind game that we're going to be working with our consultants on. The other thing that we have unique, because we have a lot of already affordable housing in our city, is we don't want to lose that, because losing that affordable housing means if we ever need to rebuild more, it's going to be so much more expensive to rebuild. And so the best thing we can do is find ways to keep the existing housing stock we have. And so that's something that will be a lot of times people will call these anti-displacement measures or anti-gentrification. We're kind of a two-pronged approach here of we need more market rate housing, but we also need to figure out how we build the market rate housing while keeping our communities affordable. We don't want it to all of a sudden become unaffordable and push other households out. And so we have a little bit, every city's dealing with this, but we have a little bit of a unique situation of looking at anti-displacement is a little bit of a different flavor for us because we also have so much high market rate that's coming in. Mm-hmm. So this is, again, just throwing it out there so you know what we're going to be talking about and working on over the next 2 years.
So question on that point. So the 10,000 new housing units we need, is that assuming no loss in a current affordable housing?
So the total number of units assumes it's the new units we need from 2019 onward.
Okay. And assuming we're preserving what we already have.
Yes,
That's
so it's
not-
assuming we're not losing any of our housing stock. This breakdown of affordability is also assuming that same of,
Okay.
if we keep all of the housing at the levels of affordability we currently have, this is what that distribution of the 10,200 would look like.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there were, I know some people are on different GMPC councils and boards. There's been extensive debate about what this looks like. Some cities are only seeing 0 to 30% AMI and almost zero all the way across. And so we had some strong debates about different methodologies. We could have gone with two of the options and felt like they both would position Kent well and would recognize the work we've already done as a city and what's been happening. But when I look at these numbers, I'm still terrified of thinking how I can get enough subsidies for 0 to 30% AMI, but I also look at them and say, there's a lot of opportunity in Kent here that we have some options to work with you all and give you different ways that we can achieve this to look at in scenarios, whereas some city planners do not have kind of that flexibility, and it's going to be a much different conversation with their councils.
Okay.
And then so growth targets, we have two things, right? So we're looking at housing units, so that could be apartments, townhomes, single-family dwelling units, but we're also looking at jobs. The 32,000 number is about double what we had forecast for last time's growth targets in 2015. When we were looking at Rally the Valley, we were already over accommodating growth when we were starting Rally the Valley, and the work that you all put in place through that is going to continue to accelerate the number of jobs we see in Kent. So this number is double what we had before, but we feel like we are on target, and our consultants will be doing more envelope math checking to make sure that we are truly on target for that. So that is the other component of the growth that we're planning for.
This 32,000 new job in Kent?
In Kent, yes.
Does it specify what type of jobs, or is it just jobs? There's all types of jobs.
So Growth Management Act just started specifying by levels of affordability. The state does not tell me what type of jobs at this point. Presumably, we would like to see them living wage jobs, jobs that help support the residents, and so a variety of different jobs as well. The state does not specify in that, and so we do have some flexibility in that regard.
And how does the state come up with that jobs metric? I mean, are they looking at our valley and saying we have more physical opportunity for jobs versus more densely packed city, or?
Great question. So this number comes actually from the county. So the state, again, looking at that funnel, the state says overall we think the state needs this many jobs by 2044. And then they say, counties, this is what we think makes sense given your population projections and residential projections, trying always to balance the housing and jobs and everything else. And then the counties get together and we all, more or less, there's a formula, but then we also negotiate. And so because we have Rally the Valley, we have a designated industrial valley, we know that we are going to have more jobs than, say, a neighboring Maple Valley. You know, we have the industrial land to support the jobs. And so some of it is based on some equations that come from the county that have been developed over many years. And then some of it comes from staff conversations and saying, you know, we've done some of this analysis and we actually think we can support more jobs here, whereas other areas may not.
Okay.
It's a little bit of an art and a science and a lot of negotiations to get us to this point. Switching gears a little bit, community engagement is something that I am so passionate about and really excited to bring into this comprehensive plan update. We really believe it's in the blood of all of our project team. It's what we breathe, that this is going to be vital to our success of reaching out into the community to hear their voices. And so there's a variety of different strategies that we've all employed in our past work and projects that we've worked on that we're all bringing to the table. MIG is also creating an equitable engagement plan right now, which has a suite of strategies for us. One thing I will say with engagement is it's incredibly time-consuming and expensive expensive, but we want to get it right. And so some of this is also tailoring our efforts so that we are not over-promising and then under-delivering, and so that we're making sure we are looking at opportunities to have multiple languages for translation for the major fact sheets and as well as the outreach and surveys. One of the things that the best practices are also saying is some people may like surveys. Other community groups may prefer to have more of a conversational dialogue or a small group discussion or the ability to talk on the phone with someone. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is not all outreach methods need to be equal all the time, but they can all be very valuable for input. And so we may not get a ton of surveys from one group of a community, but they may want to reach us and provide feedback in a different way. And so we as the staff need to also kind of adjust what our expectations are of it's not always going to be survey count numbers that will be the determination of success. So we are working on methods to meet a community in the way that they prefer and in a way that feels and is accessible for them. We have this kind of, I call this the continuum, and I'm sorry the editing and the formatting got off, but we have a variety of different groups we plan on engaging. So we have the general community and partners, so that would be our residents, our businesses, and the employees, people at farmers markets, the PTA groups, any faith communities and different advocacy organizations and nonprofits. And then we'll be forming a specific community advisory group that will be kind of our eyes and ears so that as we're getting information, we say, this is what we've heard from our broader community. What do you think? What does this mean? Where do we go from here? So we'll be forming an advisory group, and then we'll be working mostly with the Land Use and Planning Board and the Economic and Community Development Committee for the big updates in between deliverables. So as we're working on drafts and getting feedback, really Land Use and Planning Board and ECDC are where we'll be having those kind of interim conversations, and then we plan to come to you all as the entire council every quarter to give you updates on major deliverables and where we're at and what we're finding. We are open if you feel that you need more communication with us. We're happy to explore if you'd rather us send memos or if you would like us to come more frequently, or we can come less. I'm not offended by that either. I know you all are very busy, and so our goal is that by the end of this, you are not sick of us, but that you're also not surprised by what we're putting in front of you, and you feel that you've had enough opportunities to ask questions and really influence the direction. This is some of the early engagement we've done. We did the Haunted Boulevard, and we were 3 ECD aliens that were telling people about Kent's future being out of this world. We distributed postcards to help gather email addresses and have people sign up for our listserv, and I think we gathered about 300 new email addresses. So we passed out candy and had a little photo booth. We also have attended Kent 101, and Kayleen has been working with the Kent School District on some youth outreach to just hear some early feedback of, what do you think about Kent? What do you like? Where do you see us going? And then how do you want to be engaged with? And so we found people prefer websites and emails and short surveys. They don't want 20, 30, 40 question surveys. Keep it short and snappy. People also don't want traditional public meetings where you have the cookies and the punch and the planner with the board. They want to see us in the community where they're at. And not have to go to another meeting on another night. And so we have taken that to heart. And so some of the things that we're working on in our draft engagement plan are finding ways that we can partner with other organizations to reach the community where they're already planning on being somewhere, instead of making them come out and find childcare or feed dinner to kids before school or soccer practice.
Quick question. I mean, just thinking about where the community go. First thing that pops in my mind is like Corn and Corporate Days, and then what's it?
Kent International.
Yeah, Kent International. I mean, would that be something that you guys could participate in to get more information in?
We will ask to participate. I can't guarantee we will be allowed, but presumably, I mean, we have a list. We also have National Night Out. I actually have about 20 different events that Kent participates in and has a presence in. And so those are exactly ideas of events that we plan on finding ways to have tables and booths at, to either just share information or also gather feedback.
Okay.
But we will be, this is my pitch to you all, is I will be sending an email out asking for your ideas and suggestions, ranging from, are there individuals that you think would be interested that maybe haven't thought about being on a boards and commission yet, but would be interested in joining in this process, all the way to community organizations I should reach out to events that you know about. So we will be sending an email asking for your input as well, because I know you all have deep ties to the community and know more about everything that's happening than what 3 staff members do. This is what our schedule looks like. So we are getting ready to launch, and then we will be working on scenarios and looking at the analysis of really what our housing needs are beyond just the nitty-gritty of levels of affordability. Then we get into different housing types as well. And so the second half of the year, we will be framing our scenarios and our options. During the first half of next year, we will be refining and drafting. We'll throughout this entire process be talking with you all as well as the community to gather feedback and shape what we have going forward. Again, I mentioned we're doing a SEPA environmental impact statement, and so we will be having our draft document out for review, and then finally we are required by the state to adopt by December 31st of 2024. We are aiming to get that done. Before that, we also realize there's budget that's going to get in the way of some of this, and so not in the way, that we will be competing with your time, and so we would love to aim earlier than that, but the drop dead deadline is the 31st of December.
Okay.
And so just some next steps. I said we're doing a lot of our baseline analysis right now. Our consultants will be delivering to us this week a existing conditions report. We also have some checklists that we have to fill out for PSRC and Commerce of where we're at and where our gaps are in our current plans. We're also working on finalizing our equitable engagement plan. And so as we have those, we'll be working with Land Use and Planning Board and ECDC, and then determining the best way to get you all that information as well. And then April and May will be our official community kickoff and environmental scoping, which are going to be combined because most people think an EIS on its own doesn't really appeal to the community. And so we're going to combine the launch of the comprehensive plan with asking the community about other areas of environmental concern and review that they'd like. So with that, we have a little bit of time for feedback. I put some draft questions up here and really looking for feedback. When I say what are you looking forward to or concerns, it could be anything from the process of how we're doing this, as well as potential topics that we should be studying or content that the plan may or may not include. So they're broad conversations really meant to ask your feedback on, this is our first time officially talking about the comp plan launch as the whole council. And so do you have anything that you wish staff would know or priorities that would be important for us as we're working on our engagement plan and some of our other efforts?
Well, first of all, I appreciate that you guiding this ship. Really feel good about this here, so that's awesome, right? And of course, our job to kind of help push it forward. I guess the big thing for me really just making sure we're reaching out and to all aspect of the community, right? So we got 130,000 plus people that live in this area, so it'll be nice to get 10 to 20% feedback. I know that's kind of high, but I really want us to be able to kind of reach out and give people opportunity to really provide feedback and get their thoughts and their opinion as we kind of go forward. So that'll be my thought and passion. The more input we get, the better off we're going to be.
Great.
So. Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. I have first a question. So how close were the predictions from the last time? This is almost due. So the last time, how close were the predictions?
We are almost exactly on track.
That's good to know.
And we have, as Kent, when I was looking historically, we have met our growth targets. So we have not drastically varied. And some of this is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? But really, some cities do not come close to their growth targets, and they get in trouble. And they can have severe consequences in terms of financial restitution issues. And so we have historically, over the past, since GMA was installed in the 90s, we have been tracking very close, if not almost right on it.
Okay. As far as engagement, a source that I normally wouldn't think about is just watching our agenda. There are meetings that we get a lot of people who are waiting out there. Sometimes we have neighborhood groups who are being recognized. So neighbor meetings when you know that you're going to get a lot of the public, especially public that is not usually engaged, coming here to watch someone get an award, to be given an award themselves. that might be a time to set up a table right out here. And as far as reaching out to the groups, I like that I heard you say you're asking the groups how they want to be contacted, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a survey, so I appreciate that also. And I imagine we are covering the languages. Thank you very much.
We are in conversations. I'm actually working on a contract right now for translation and interpretation services. Can I say what we had discussed? Okay. I didn't know if it was we discussed top 5 languages for the major project fact sheets and then major outreach efforts, and then at the end having an executive summary. So we are, there's a lot of nuances in all of that for sure, whether it's going to be, interpretation versus translation for various, but the top 5 languages is what we've committed to.
Pat, the top 5 align up with what we talked about over the weekend? Awesome. Are you finished, Councilman? Go ahead. Please.
For our live meetings, I imagine that we're going to, looking at the top 5, have a way that people can let us know if we need to have translation there or not?
Yes.
Thank you. And considering that sometimes they may not reach out, but working on to make sure that people can come to the meetings and take part also.
Yeah, to that point too, I think, a lot of what we've heard is that trying to do simultaneous interpretation, a lot of community members don't feel that that's the most effective use of their time as well. And so there may be instances when we also do targeted meetings in specific languages and really push the outreach to come to the meeting in that language as well.
Or to go to a meeting possibly.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Fincher. Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you. Great presentation. I'm super excited that we're kicking off this work. I think ever since we did the housing options plan, I've been looking forward to this next step. Couple things, having served on both the Aging and Disabilities Advisory Council and Affordable Housing Committees this last few years, there's an intersect there with groups that are disabled, senior groups, often are kind of overlooked as having special and unique needs in these type of feedback situations. So I would just ask that we make sure that we're reaching out to those communities too. They have different housing, safety, transportation needs. So I want to make sure that we're hearing the voices for them, for seniors, disabled communities, and then also I would even add LGBTQ in there as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Michaud, followed by Core.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you so much for this presentation. My question was similar to what the consequences are if we don't meet these guidelines, because a lot of the feedback that I hear is Kent is growing too quickly, and then you try to explain the Growth Management Act, and I don't know what the consequences are. And then the second part is about feedback. We have our Parks Department and Public Works who have done a lot of engagement recently, and I'm just hoping that those comments and that feedback will be used in this so we don't have to duplicate efforts.
Yes. In terms of the consequences, the Kent community is not unique. I think many communities feel the pressures of growth happening right now, and so there are consequences at different levels. The first is with the PSRC region. We have to have them certify our plans. And so if we don't have those plans certified, we could be foregoing millions of dollars of grant funding, because PSRC also controls all of our transportation dollars that come down from the federal government. So that's the big one. The state doesn't technically certify our plans, but they do get a lot of power in weighing in and providing comments, which PSRC will take into account. And if we do not have a certified plan, there are some penalties in terms of withholding sales and use tax and some other financial revenues that come into the city. It's really rare for it to be that extreme, but it is possible that the state could take other financial measures against us as well. And then in terms of outreach, Parks and Transportation have done an amazing job, and I've been learning so much from them as well. So we have kind of a group that coordinates, and we're all talking. We are consolidating. I know Parks uses something called Engagement HQ for a lot of their outreach, and we're consolidating some efforts so that we can all have access to that tool and website, as well as then sharing events that we're going to, sharing listservs, all of the kind of other resources that we have. I bought a button maker for some of our outreach, which sounds really silly, but it keeps everyone from little ones all the way to older adults occupied while you have a conversation on some substantive issues with someone else. And so we have a lot of resources that we're going to share as well, but those are examples of things that we're bringing to the table, but then we're also learning from Parks and Transportation.
Please, Councilman McCord.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Kristen, for this presentation, and thank you for starting work on this a little bit early and coming to us for our feedback. And Councilman Michaud, there are some cities who are, like Kristen just mentioned, some cities who have are not very happy with the numbers for 0 to 30% of housing options that they have to start working on, because it's they're not used to that. Kent is, but they're not. So I'm hoping that will help, have a bit more equity issues in our community, in our county. I hope you're planning on giving this presentation to Culture Communities Board as well. I think they're a great resource, and they have connections to populations in Kent that we might not reach out to, and neighborhood councils. So I think feedback from them would be very beneficial to our comprehensive plan. So,
Great.
yeah,
I will
thank
add
you.
them for our presentation rounds.
Thank you, Councilman McCord. Any other comments? And if we don't tonight, we can still call, right?
Yes.
Provide feedback. So you think of something that's later on tonight, tomorrow, whenever, please reach out to Kristen. I'm sure she'll be
And there will
happy to.
be an email in the next week.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts you can also tag in, and
Okay.
happy to answer any other questions. Yes.
Okay. Well, no more question. Great job. Thank you. Appreciate the presentation, and we look forward to starting this journey together.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Take care. Thank you so much. We have a 5-minute break, guys. We'll adjourn to workshop 5 minutes, and then we come back together. Okay.